from Offaly. In fact, this year I would have lived longer in Meath than I have in Offaly, and I have two avid Meath ladies in my household, so I'm sort of a Meath adopted person, and I have a big interest in the county, and that's why I suppose I've got involved with the Meath Economic Forum. So as Kevin said, there's a couple of things I thought I might talk about this evening. One is maybe to talk about, maybe to set the context about why I'm here at all. So I'll mention a bit about Deloitte, talk a little bit about the economy, and then try and bring some of our perspectives in relation to business and the successful businesses that we've seen and some of the challenges we've seen businesses having to deal with. And I suppose to leave you with a couple of messages that I think are quite important in the context of businesses being successful and sustainable. And I will finish off by saying something about the Meath Economic Forum. So maybe just to kick off, first of all, in relation to Deloitte, I think probably everybody knows, or a lot of people would know, we're in the audit, tax, consulting and corporate finance game. We have about 2,000 people on the island of Ireland, so it's a fairly sizable business. And I noticed that there was a lot of young people here earlier today. In fact, nearly 40% of those people are under the age of 25. And I personally have huge faith in young people and what they can do in relation to driving this economy forward. And I think they really are needed. We're part of a very large organisation. Around the world we have 210,000 people employed in 150 countries, and that's relevant because I suppose that gives us a perspective around what's happening, not just in this market, but what's happening right around the world. And although we deal with some very large businesses, we also deal with some very small businesses. So although our business inside in Dublin might deal with something like Microsoft's European operation, we also deal with some farmers out of that building inside in Dublin. So it goes right down through the spectrum. So we have a good insight, and a big core part of our business is that owner-managed SME sector, which is quite important in this economy. And I mentioned two things there. We've been 10 years best places to work as an organisation. I mentioned that for a reason that I'll come back to later. And we are the number one graduate recruiter of professional services. We're number one recognised by the students in this marketplace. In fact, in the overall market, number one in the market is Google and number two is Deloitte. And we've lots of accolades that we've got. So that's a sort of a snapshot maybe of some of the things that we've been at over the last number of years. Some of those are about difficult stories, which is about things like debt, advisory and restructuring and dispute services, and that's been very active. Maybe not very positive. In the recent past, though, there are things up there that we have been doing that are very positive around strategy, debt and equity raising, mergers and acquisitions. And there's some things that are new around the whole technology, analytics and digital, and some of that was probably covered earlier in the session today. And I leave one in the middle called succession planning, and I might even talk about that a little bit later. So that's Deloitte. So let me just say a few words about the economy. And I've seen a lot of presentations on this at this point in time, and I could have put up 40 slides in relation to the Irish economy, but I'm not an economist. But what's clear from our point of view as an organisation that are serving both multinationals, owner-managed businesses in Ireland, the market has turned. That's clear. Now, some people might say that's not very clear to me as an organisation, and it hasn't happened in my business, and it hasn't happened in some parts of the economy in the country, and I think everybody accepts that. But it is clear that it has changed. It has moved. And the predictions, the growth predictions, I think if people reflect back on what happened when things were going wrong, everything that came out from an economist was lowering growth expectations every time. What you see happening now is people doing the reverse of that. There's more confidence coming in and the growth is there. So it's a good time to be starting to reflect on something like this event and what needs to happen in Meath. The global picture is a lot more mixed, and although the US has maybe stumbled a little bit, what is clear is America has come out of recession, the longest recession probably that economy has saw in a long, long time. The UK is seeing growth, and I would have some concerns about Europe. It is at best flatlining at this point in time with some, I would say, some key risks inside in it. We're a sort of a unique economy inside in Europe because we're not following what's happening in the Eurozone economy as a market, as a country. And from an Irish point of view, the fact that we are so open is a plus to us right now. The fact that we were into the problem early is a plus to us right now. And I think the final point is the fact that our two biggest trading partners is the US and the UK is a big plus to us now, because those are the parts of the market that are beginning to move. But I think people would say there is a two-speed economy. But a bit of movement beginning to come. Interest rates are low, and although we can't control interest rates in this country, the big plus we have right now is that Europe is in some difficulty, and they cannot put up rates. We can't control them, but they cannot put them up, and that suits Ireland right now. And customers, and I use corporates also, are still cautious, and there's a little bit of work to be done in that regard before the market really gets moving. We have a couple of advantages in relation to our skilled workforce. Education levels. We also have the lowest percentage of pensioners in Europe. That's dependent on the working population. And indeed, we're joint first on fertility rates. So we have a good pipeline coming down the line. We keep talking, and we've relied very heavily on the FDI side. And sometimes I wonder, when we throw up those particular stats, why we shouldn't, as businesses operating in Ireland, think about the advantage we have. We keep telling the Americans and the UK and the Europeans as to the strength we have in this economy, and sometimes actually we don't tell ourselves about that great capability we have with the people that's in this country right now. And there's lots of other words on that slide. One thing I will reference though, which is on the right hand side, is that the entrepreneurs and the owner-managed businesses and the SMEs are the lifeblood of this economy. And indeed, not just this economy. If you go back for the last 10 years, 98% of every job created in Europe in the last 10 years has been created by an SME, not by multinationals. And there's still a lot to do to make life easy for those businesses. From a budget point of view, I'll reference FDI and what has happened in the budget from an FDI point of view, because I do think it's actually relevant to something I'm going to say in relation to Meath and the opportunity for Meath. There has been certainty brought to the whole FDI space, and Ireland was clearly in the limelight, which was not a positive place to be. That, I believe, has been dealt with, and we now have an advantage, which I will come back to a bit later. Certain things have been done to help the SME sector. But we in Deloitte believe that the entrepreneur in Ireland has got no break. It's the only category in the country that really has not been looked after. And if you recognise what I just said earlier about the importance of the SME sector and the creation of jobs, that is something that seriously has to be addressed from a budget point of view. With that in mind, let me just talk to you about some things that are important in the context of doing business and areas for businesses to focus on. So there was a bunch of people, a couple of guys from Deloitte did research, and they looked at the most successful companies around the world. And they looked at it over a 60-year period to try and identify what made those companies successful, and could they see some common themes that came out of that piece of research. And they came up with 3 rules. Rule number 1, better before cheaper. So if you're in business, competing on price, if that's your proposition, in the long term, you'll be lucky to be a star player in your space. The real successful companies have focused on what differentiates them as a business. What makes them relevant to their customer, and that value they can charge for. The second point, and although lots of businesses, all businesses in this economy for the last 7 years have spent their time focusing on cost, but you will never cut your way to greatness. That is not a success story, and you need to figure out how you drive and focus on that revenue line. And in this really complicated world of ours, The next rule is there's no one. There isn't a third rule. That's simple. It's actually more complicated when you start to try to reflect on it at an individual business level. But those two things are really important in relation to doing business in this economy today. The second area I want to touch on is talent. And for those people in business, over the next 10 to 15 years, this is going to be your biggest problem. There's absolutely no doubt about that. This is going to be our biggest problem. And when we did some work around what is the challenge inside an organisation today on talent, there's a lot of weary people, there's a lot of overwhelmed people, there's a lot of information being thrown at people, and their ability to digest that and understand where an organisation is going, what they're supposed to be doing, what they're contributing, has become very complex for them. I'm going to skip the reskill, the HR piece, because that probably is a little bit more relevant to large organisations, because probably in the SME sector, there mightn't be a HR department. It could be the owner-manager themselves that are running that. But the other issue that's really important is about leadership. And if you're going to be successful as a business, in my mind, and inside the Deloitte organisation today, we have a focus on building leaders at all levels. So it's not about me as a managing partner being the leader, and it's not about the 7 people that report into me being the leaders. The person who the customer meets the first day they come in to our building on reception, that person needs to understand they're also a leader in our business, and they need to act accordingly. So an engaged workforce is really important, really important. In my business today, the biggest threat is innovation. And although we compete in a marketplace where there are 3 very other big players in the marketplace, although Deloitte is the biggest of the 4, there are 3 big players, that's not where my risk is. The challenge to my business is going to come from somebody small. It's going to come from somebody sitting in their bedroom trying to figure out how to do things differently. And in your business, if you haven't created this dynamic and culture of innovation, and you haven't got the people inside in the organisation who begin to think like that, think about how you do business, how you serve your customers, what new products you come up with, what new ways of operating you come up with, then you're going to have a challenge. So innovation needs to be on your agenda. And I suppose a slight negative from an Irish economy point of view, and I just put this slide in, is that when you talk about innovation and then you go into the whole area of research and developments, and others can speak probably more to this particular point, we're not good in this space. And the reality of it is, if other countries are spending more money on research, at some point they must have an advantage on us, assuming not all of that is going to waste. So there is something that we need to do and businesses need to do to focus on investment for the future. Can I just put up that heading, which is a Deloitte Best Managed Companies Award? And I was at a meeting this morning. Deloitte run this programme, and we try to identify the best managed companies around Ireland. And the PLCs can't enter this, and the multinational companies can't enter this. This is for Irish-owned businesses only. And I'm part of the judging panel, and we looked at 30 companies this morning on this. As an organisation, we're clear that the companies who are successful successful as companies and are the best managed and the most likely to succeed for the long term, focus on 4 things, and they're good at 4 things. They're good at strategy. They're clear about it, they know what it is, and they deliver it. That's the first thing they do. The second thing they do is they have great capability, whether that's capability in their sales function, in their technology function, in their R&D area, but they have great capability. Third, they focus on people and gain the commitment of people throughout the organisation. That engagement that I spoke about will give you a 20% better performance in your business. And the final point they're good at is managing finance. They have it, or they know where to get it, or they mind it well. And my final point in relation to trying to run your business is there's one thing will kill you, and that is culture. And people reference this, and we've done lots of work in it, and if anybody wants some material on this, I'm more than happy to share it with them. People may know of a company called Enron that had a big impact on the markets and brought down one of the very large accountancy practices many, many years ago. And lots of organisations, including Enron, have ambitions to be best at customer service, great place for people, great place for innovation, quality, and all those type of things. And in the lobby of Enron's offices were their core values, which were integrity, respect, excellence, and communication. But what happened in the organisation, i.e. that culture of the organisation, was not reflected in those values. So within your businesses, you need to understand whether you as an owner of a business are saying one thing, but actually what people see and what people do is something different. And that will kill you every time in relation to deliver on strategy. And the final point on that is around purpose. And this comes back a little bit to the whole customer thing. As an organisation, what is your purpose? And do people understand? So if people understand, and we've done some work on this, and again I can share this with people if they want, if people understand that the purpose of the company is to make profit, then what you get out of that organisation will be significantly less than an organisation whose purpose is to serve customers, to produce the best quality product, that the emphasis is on something different. And that cascades right down through lots of things within the organisation, and your customers see it as well. Your customers see what those priorities are. So purpose is important. Okay, I just want to finish up with a couple of comments in relation to the Meath Economic Forum and development in Meath. It is a prosperous county with many advantages, and there are opportunities in Meath. There's opportunities in the knowledge area. There's the advantages Meath had from a competitive point of view. There's lots going on in the whole technology, financial services, shared services, call centres, that whole area. And there are challenges, having said that, because Meath probably hasn't been as successful from an FDI point of view over the years. It has a narrow base of economic activity, and a lot of the skill leaves the county to go elsewhere. And the question is, are we fulfilling that potential? So as Kevin said, there is a vision being developed right now for Meath. And that vision is around making Meath a very vibrant and dynamic economy, a sustainable economy. And there's lots going on in that space. There's some baseline work has been done by NUI Meath. The group that Kevin referred to is there to try and support and help Meath in the context of trying to deliver on this result. And there will be a draft plan coming out here in the new year. But let me just make a final point then before I go. So Meath County Council, with the help of the Economic Forum and indeed everybody else who's involved on the periphery of it, can come out with a strategy. And that's going to have to be delivered on. And that strategy can try and deal with some of the issues that maybe have been blockers, for example, in relation to something like FDI, maybe blockers in relation to supporting maybe some new startups and all those type of things. And they will do that. The advantage we have today in County Meath is that reference I made to taxation and what we did from an Irish government point of view. The key word in global tax planning today is substance. Substance. Luxembourg doesn't have it. Ireland has it. Has it in spades. The businesses that are set up in Ireland are not brass plate businesses. So there's an opportunity for the Irish economy in total to bring work in. And we are seeing that as a business today, where people are looking at this country to move into a location and bring substance into this economy. That will present an opportunity. But you know, what's also important is the businesses that are inside in Meath today. And when I referenced earlier those things that make businesses successful, the county also needs your businesses to be successful. It needs your businesses to be looking at where the opportunities are, to be looking at the talent, to be focused on the customer, to be trying to drive that whole innovation agenda. So there is a very key role that your businesses can play in relation to delivering on this particular strategy. And with that, I leave you with a slightly changed statement that your county needs you, ask not what you can do for them. Thank you very much.